Dan, what do we know of this man's whereabouts?
Not very much, but one of the Telegram channels here called Baza say that they've just had a conversation with his daughter, and she says that he hasn't been detained and everybody is just doing their jobs. But there has been a lot of speculation over the past few days about his whereabouts because Sergei Surovikin is known to have been relatively close with Yevgeny Prigozhin. He was never one of Russia's top military leadership who Prigozhin would criticize in his many vocal, angry tirades. In fact, Prigozhin once said that Surovikin would make a good chief of the general staff, and another man who was a deputy defense minister, Mikhail Mizintsev, should be defense minister himself. And Mizintsev was sacked from the MOD in April and promptly went over and joined Wagner himself. So there were a lot of questions about Surovikin, whether he was too close to Wagner. You'll remember that last year he was appointed head of operations in Ukraine, basically the man to run things. And he was essentially the fall guy for Russia's withdrawal from Kherson in November. And then at the beginning of this year, he was once again demoted, and Valery Gerasimov was put back in charge of operations in Ukraine. And the suggestion was that was because Surovikin was too close to Wagner, and Putin and Shoigu had decided it was time to try and get Wagner in line and bring them more under the remit of the control of the MOD and the MOD altogether. And the final iteration of that was this contracts spat, which seems to have been the final trigger for Prigozhin to wage his march on Moscow. So the video of Surovikin from Friday night, as you say, was urging Prigozhin to desist from staging a mutiny. But there have been a lot of questions over whether that was forced. I suppose what I would say is that he's not a public figure. He doesn't, look very good on camera. It's not his natural place to be. And the same applies for the fact that we haven't seen him in public. We haven't seen Valery Gerasimov either. But I remember other times when we've talked about the fact that we haven't seen Gerasimov. He's just not a public figure. They don't wheel him out for this kind of occasion. But the Ministry of Defense won't comment. The Kremlin say it's up to the Ministry of Defense. So that's where we are. But it would be interesting to know, because of all of these questions. There's also a suggestion that this reporting is coming out as a sort of information operation to try and destabilize Russia's military leadership, and that the generals are just getting on with their job. Well, we don't know, but there is a lot of rumors of a possible purge amongst the security forces as a result of Prigozhin's march, and that's why these questions are so live.
And also, the person we have seen also is President Putin. We've seen a lot of him over the last few days. What did you make of his latest appearance?
Well, today he's giving a rather mundane speech at an event for creative thinking. Yesterday, the pictures were extraordinary. He was down in Dagestan, in the city of Derbent there. He doesn't make many trips down to Dagestan. And he doesn't make many trips where he goes into the throng of crowds and starts shaking hands. There we saw lots of people holding up their mobile phones, trying to touch the president. Does seem to be a kind of new touchy-feely President Putin, very different from the man who you would have to do 3 separate COVID tests before you were allowed in the same room as him. So I'm sure the Kremlin is trying to workshop his image as a more amenable figure for the general public. In the wake of this, especially after those comments that he made, that the army and the people were with the state, and that what Prigozhin was doing was treason. We've definitely seen from Vladimir Putin a real effort to put emphasis on the fact that the army and the people stand behind him, and now here he is, lots of pictures of him going and being one with the people. We'll probably see a bit more of that in the coming days too.